Welcome to after lunch session here. Everyone ready to go? I'm Marybeth Roberts. I know I've met many of you in the room before, but some folks, this might be my first time meeting. Been in the TMS space now for well over 30 years. Was involved with Glog, one of the original founders with Glog, one of the original developers of the product. So a lot of the data model, the agents, the workflow, all of that kind of stuff. Today, I work with a lot of customers and folks in taking enhancements and extending them into the product as we can continuing to move year after year after year. So I'm going to take the session today and do a bit of a development-focused update on where we are with OTM as well as GTM, since we share a lot of the same platform areas. But before I go into like kind of the content, I know Jim Mooney often comes over here. He was not able to make it this year. He had another engagement. So I also know that Jim, those of you that have been here in this presentation, Jim always gives you guys a Philadelphia sports update, right? And you would feel amiss if you came to the SIG conference and you went home without a Philadelphia sports thing. And so I am the one to give you a Philadelphia sports update. I will take that torch. And here we go. So, Philadelphia Eagles always has to be mentioned at a SIG presentation. But guess what? They had a very unremarkable season last season. They played, the main regular season, won barely by a couple points, by mostly luck, enough games to make it to the playoffs. They were actually a team that everyone thought was going to win the Super Bowl. Actually got to the playoffs and promptly lost the first game. So after that, there then became a lot of drama in Philadelphia, notably, fire everybody kind of conversations. So that's what was going on with the Philadelphia Eagles. So we're ready to pretty much put that behind us. But we will be hosting a little event this summer at our stadium. And it is an event that some of you in this room may have heard of before. The World Cup will be played multiple matches in our Philadelphia Eagles stadium. And these are the dates and the schedule as follows that will be at the Philadelphia Eagles stadium. That's pretty cool. So then I thought, so the World Cup's coming to our backyard. I got to go to one of these games, right? Clearly. So now let's start looking at ticket prices on what we could do to get Marybeth to one of these games. So we have some options here, guys. I could go look at the tickets over here, and they're running about $2,000 on the secondary market a ticket. Ooh, that's a little steep. Or, maybe we can get a little bit better. We have the pitch side lounge here for $3,600. I guess you get a seat and a drink for that amount of money. And then we go on to this one. So Saturday, July 4th, which will be probably a pretty exciting match, there's 2 suites still available for only $117,000. Got you. There you go. There you go. So I'm actually tying the Idea Lab sourcing to this. We'll see how we go. The other entertaining thing is this is July 4th, which is our Independence Day from the pesky Brits, and it is also the 250th year that was done in Philadelphia. So I'm thinking this is going to be a pretty lively day in Philadelphia. So if you happen to be watching any of the matches, you may actually see the stadium there. All right, so now we can officially check off our Philadelphia sports update. Okay, so now for not so entertaining things, but maybe. I'll do a brief little systems update, a couple slides that, kind of Jim would have done. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the Redwood journey. We're getting a lot of questions about it. We're making a lot of progress in that area. I'm just going to hit on giving you information on where we are in the journey, how we see it unfolding, when this would be impacting you. But I'm not going to go into a deep dive on how it all works. I anticipate, next year we'll do a full session on that kind of an area. But I want to let you know where we are in the journey and how it's uncovering. There's also a lot of similar stuff on our integration update. Where are we around that part of the platform? And then a couple feature highlights that we can go through, a couple of the new functional areas in TMS around version 25C, 26A, 26B, and then where we are in the roadmap. So where we are in development team, so we've packaged up 26B. That's going to be going out into the field. You guys are all rolling up onto that. And we'll be wrapping up our 26C development. So I'll give you a little roadmap on where we are there. And what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to pause after see how we're doing on time, but I plan on pausing after the Redwood session, maybe taking a few questions there. And then I'll pause again after the integration area, take a few questions, because it might be hard to do all the questions at the end. They'll be on different topics. First and foremost, this is another thing Jim is always responsible for sharing at the SIG, which is on-prem. That date, there's many people in the room that are very familiar with this, and that is the last version of OTM, GTM on cloud is 6.5.3. And on Q4, we will be sort of ending our maintenance releases that we have on that platform. You can still absolutely log SRs. You can still work with, if we've resolved the issues in previous updates, we will send them out, but we're not going to be continuing adding to our on-prem release.
So Marybeth, I just want to make sure we understand what that means. Sorry for interrupting you. No new bugs will be patched. However, old existing bugs for which patches exist.
Yes, so the clarification there is that if you happen to discover a new bug, a new problem, we will not be fixing that. But if you encounter an issue that you've not encountered before, but it's one we've already resolved, we will issue you the patch to do that. But we're all about keeping that platform stable for those that are going to continue on it, but really migrating to the cloud. In terms of the regions, there is also the ones we have today, and then the US Gov was recently added. We continue our releases that we have each 3 times a year. So we do an A, B, and a C release. We do not do a D release for OTM and GTM so that we're not doing updates at the end of the year. But these releases have tons of functionality in them, and you'll see the Idea Labs having a really high number. You'll also see the A releases being the largest release because that has the largest cycle since we're not doing the D release. That's sort of our cadence. We've gotten involved with that, working pretty well today, how we're able to keep cycling through. So now I'm going to spend a couple minutes on our Redwood journey. This is actually an exciting uptake. Redwood is the Oracle initiative to update the UIs with a modern, fresh, hopefully a little bit more intuitive UI experience. The good news with us is we're able to leverage a bunch of the technology from the Oracle team and embed it and leverage it within our Redwood journey. It's a phased-in approach, and I think that that's what's really important. The first way that you guys can start experiencing this journey is in 26A and 26B. There's an ability to what we call try the new Redwood experience. And I've highlighted that up there. So your users would be able to go over there and click on it. And especially all of you folks here in this room, you'll be able to see and interact a little bit with the new UIs as they're coming out. So here that'll take you to a launch page. This is also very similar in the WMS product. You can start exploring, and then that's going to show you some of the Redwood screens here. A couple items. The user will only have access to see the Redwood screens if they have access to that screen on their base OTM menu. So really, the initial screens that we have out are many of the setup screens, many of your power data, your configuration, and your setup screens. So not all of your end users may have access to those screens, in which case they won't have much of a new Redwood experience. But which is okay, because we want to keep their world kind of not too impacted. But for those of you like admin and setup or your super users, you'll start to see how these new screens will behave compared to the old ones. So really encourage everybody, starting in 26B, to go on and try the new experience. The other thing that I want to go over is just a couple concepts. So the first and foremost is, whenever you're talking about Redwood, people always ask what's happening with workbenches. So we want to say clearly workbenches are staying. And you can kind of think of it this way. The workbenches, that configuration that allows you to have multiple panes up, it allows you to work with multiple orders, maybe a Gantt chart and a map. That cockpit will be able to launch and interact with new Redwood screens as they become available. But the workbench itself will stay. So workbench is staying. There will be Redwood capabilities that you'll start seeing inside your workbench experience. One of them is that what we call the search screen, the Redwood search screen, is now also available in Workbench. A Redwood search screen replaces our Finder screen concept that we have in the old managers, which is kind of nice because that's a pretty old concept. So the Redwood screens the Workbench will be launching new Redwood screens, and it'll be launching new action screens. All of your Workbench configurations that you invest in will be migrated and will move forward. That all stays. So that's the first thing about the Redwood experience. Primarily, workbenches are staying. There's I'm going to talk about, in general, some pros about moving to Redwood, and then there's probably some cons as well. So one of the pros is it really is a major UI refresh. And when we compare ourselves, or when we're talking about maybe sales and competitive opportunities, the old OTM manager screens, the Finder screens, are a little stale. So it is really an opportunity to refresh that area of the code. The other thing is some consistency. These screens have all been developed over 25 years, and some of them have, their own little personality, their own little quirks going on. And because we're using a very standardized framework, you'll see more consistency getting baked into the screens. So that's a positive. A major tech stack upgrade that we need to do, and we'll be taking advantage of that with Redwood. Let's talk about the Finder screens. You now have your search and your results in Redwood appear on the same page, which is, the more common pattern that we see today. So that's a positive. Another big positive is the screens natively in Redwood can render and be different sizes on different devices. So what that means is the screens, you could design a lot of Redwood screens that you can run on your mobile device. So therefore, a lot of the capabilities that folks want to say, hey, you know, I want my planner to get access to, reviewing this, etc., will be available right out of the box with Redwood. So we're kind of blending our mobile tech stack and our mobile metadata together with our Redwood, with the goal that you'll be able to design screens that'll be mobile ready. A few cons. First of all, it's embracing change. It will be a change, and it will be across our user base. But I'm going to talk about a journey on how that will happen. So you'll see, you know, a little bit of changes here, a little bit of changes there, and as we go. It's not going to be just the big bang. The other thing is, you know, not every option will be available in Redwood day one. I mean, we have 25 years of UI tweaks. To hold off releasing Redwood until we've ticked every one of those boxes will take a while. So we got to move fast, get started. So for an example is, in the results screens, you have that tree area. We don't have that baked into the initial drop of our results screens. But our goal would be is to get as many of them as we can in before we deprecate any of the old. So that'll be, you know, it's part of the journey. And then the other one is, the reality is there is more white space or blank space on the Redwood screens than there are in some of our OTM screens. So we're working with the Redwood team in some configurations to really tighten that, compact that up as best we can. So those are some of the Redwood concepts. Those of you who haven't seen a Redwood screen, I just pulled up the equipment types, and I'm going to say we'll hold off on the deep dive on how they all work a little bit till later. But you have the ability to search up in that top bar with a bunch of your search options that will then filter the list here that we have. You have a lot of inline editing on that list. This screen here and the way that it's laid out works off of our current screen set or finder set. So if you've configured those in your UI and you have that, that's what's going to appear in Redwood. So we've leveraged a lot of the back end parts too. If I were to edit one of these equipment types, what you'll see is a little bit of that white space. Those fields up there in the header. And then down here are the child fields. So against an equipment type, I can have special services, equipment groups, remarks. So you'll see that all on that one page. You can have, you know, many tabs across as we put our kind of children elements there. That can scroll. And we have, like, let's say here, entering a new remark. What happens is this screen here, it's a drawer. It pops out, I enter my data, and then save it. Then it refreshes the screen there. So this, if you were to go in, try the equipment type screen and work with it, you'll see some of the Redwood patterns coming to life here. Our adoption plan. This is my last slide on Redwood, and then we'll take a few questions if they have them. So when we first started out the screens out for Redwood, we just had it for just admin. That's 26A. So if you're an admin user inside of OTM, you could see some of them. So now for 26B, kind of Redwood for all, or you're able to try that new experience and you'll be able to see the screens that you can see on the menu in Redwood if they've been moved over. 26C, there's more screens added. So where we are in 26C is we've identified kind of all of the power data screens, and we've organized them as sort of simple power data, more dynamic power data, profiles, and we're cranking through each one of those. So that's kind of the setup screens. So 26C, you'll see a lot of that. You'll also start seeing the search screen replacing the Finder set. So that if you were going to be on even like an order release manager, you'd have the ability to use the new Redwood search screen, which would look like a search and your list there in Redwood. But then when you drilled into it, if that screen hasn't been implemented yet in Redwood, it would launch the existing manager. So there's an ability to kind of move a little bit into the Redwood paradigm, but not all of it completely. The next big thing that we'll take a look at is, after we're kind of prototyping them right now, so they'll kind of roll out in 27A and B, are more complicated screens. So shipment, order, and having them in Redwood. Those screens will have kind of a metadata layer that's configurable. So a lot like we used to have like manager layout. It's a metadata file where you would be able to say, hey, let's say if this was that screen here, I don't want all those fields. I only want 3 fields. You can configure what fields. You can put default values, all of that type of configuration. And you'll start to see that coming in the 27A timeframe with those screens. The other thing is the goal would be is sort of 27A early next year. The default would be to use the Redwood menu, the Redwood initial launch screens, but you can opt out. But I do see that, quite a few folks may stay in that blended area. More screens, etc. And even by 27C, there may still be a few screens that need converting. For example, if you go under that system administration and manage cache or properties or stuff like those screens will be the last ones that we move over to the Redwood experience. So we'll get to those as we do. And that's the end of the Redwood highlight. So we have a rich, robust REST API today that has all of our business objects on there with an API that can allow you, of course, to get, create, and update and delete, manage CRUD on what we call our resources, our business objects. We also have all of our power data screens with a REST API, which is different than what we had just in XML. So in XML, in the old world, you'd used XML for your main ones, but you had to use a lot of CSV loaders or stuff like that for some of your other data. You don't have to now. There really is an API that can get you to maintain and view and get to pretty much every data element that we have in our data area. So really encourage folks to look at this. The other concept here is there's a long list in our API guide that if you guys are bored one night and you want to read through, I highly encourage it actually. Mark Hagan is a fantastic writer. He has a lot of content in here. You will learn something. I will guarantee you that. So anyway, the other way that our REST APIs can be used is to be our full sort of supply chain or your business-to-business communication flow. So as a batch processing, if you're sending many orders from EBS or our OM products or other ones, SAP, you can use our transmission, multiple transactions, REST API, pump it into OTM. All of our workflow will work right off of that batch processing. So all of your OMD workflow agents and all of those pieces there. So really, there are folks that are starting their journey with us that are going all REST. And I'll have a little tidbit on that one a little bit later. A plug for our REST data export area. So you can also go take a look at that in our API guide that you're all going to be reading tonight. It's a capability to export large volumes of data to an external data store. So many people, it was mentioned a little while ago, have replaced even, Golden Gate or solutions like that with our data export API. We have a lot of places here. Content compression supports your generic ones there. Kind of what's new, or why I'm highlighting it, is just to let you guys know the adoption rate here is really taking off. So if you are considering this, reach out. There's a lot of other customers that have leveraged this and up and going. Very intuitive to use, very great capability. Recently added on our REST APIs integration is the equivalent of our kind of out XML profile is our out JSON profile. It's the ability to, when you're sending an outbound to a downstream system, you can control and configure what data elements you want to send. Really trim it down to the target system and what we need to do here. So we have that out in our releases. And now I'm going to go a little, this is the most geeky or nerdy part or technical part of the presentation. So zone out if you want. But with our transactions, those of you who have done a lot of our XML integrations or worked a lot with our, OTM glog stuff, RC. RC stands for replace children. What that could be used for is, let's think that you're like up in SAP and you have a sales order or delivery that has 4 lines on it, and that came down to OTM and we created that order. And then up there in SAP, they deleted one. Well, the transaction that we're going to get is the new one with 3 lines. And what we're going to want to do is replace the 4 lines we had before with the updated 3 lines that came down in that payload. So it's a replace children kind of command. And there's a kind of an equivalent of put with REST. So we have enabled that capability here. So it's really taking our integration flows that have all of those resources and understanding how we communicate with upstream, downstream systems. Now the fun part. Those of you who really play a lot with our integrations will understand shipment actuals. That's the piece where the shipment's coming back from WMS, coming back from an inventory system. That one is where it's telling us how that shipment is actually packed, what orders are really on that shipment, what LPNs, what pallets, what boxes and cartons each line is in. That data that comes in, we then need to, in essence, replace the way we plan to ship it with what the warehouse tells us how they actually packed it. Now here, we're working on a very sort of sophisticated REST API that's going to allow us to understand taking what we're building as a custom action. That'll take that shipment, those packed ship units. We will then go and update all of our internal structures. Much lighter weight than what we force you to do today in XML. So today in XML, when you send that over, you also have to tell us as shipment information, stop level information, and the ship units. Well, quite frankly, the downstream system may not be holding all of that. They're not actually running their world on our S equipment grid. I really don't know why, but they're not. So then there was a lot of calling back into our system to construct that XML to send it back into us. Does that sound efficient? It doesn't sound efficient. So what we're able to do is you can send that payload, we do the heavy lifting and do an update that. So a more streamlined API, which will help drive us for our agentic AI workflows that are going to be happening here. The last piece on this topic here on the integrations is we will leverage our existing shipment actual code. Those of you who know the integration command for propagating that change to that shipment, maybe upstream, downstream, etc., our new REST API sits on top of all of that. So that integration feed you would still be changing. One example of what that integration command could kind of do is the following screen here. And this is where this kind of capability that we have been extending in the product, kind of like 25C, 26A, 26B, we're pretty much wrapped up with it now, is around understanding that shipment actual that came in may be updating other related shipments. So you're telling us information about this shipment, but you want us to update other shipments as well. Starbucks used these new capabilities when they went up to from on-prem to the cloud, streamlined their entire middleware area and just was able to really just get rid of most of it and managing it in this way. So for example, here, my first leg I planned order 1 and order 2 on that shipment, and then I had order 3 and order 4 here. All of these orders are going to the same customer on these multiple 2 trucks. The way it's sitting in the warehouse, they decided to pick and pack and pull different 1 and 3 together. 1 and 3 were sitting close to each other. Those pallets, that came on the shipment. So they'll tell us this shipment actual, and then in that integration command, they tell us what they want to do with it. So I say, here's my shipment actual, here's what I actually shipped on shipment 1. If those orders are on other shipments over here, clean them up too. And then also, do I want to propagate that change in a multi-leg scenario to understand how that's going to appear on my ocean-going leg too? So this types of capabilities have really kind of been enhanced in the core logic, but is really streamlining our integrations. Something cool to look at there. And then the next topic to kind of switch over to is where these REST actions are driving a lot of business behavior. So if you go look on that REST API guide, you're going to see a bunch of business actions that we have around, like an order release, a shipment, an invoice. We have those organized under their business action. So for example, I might, on my shipment do a change service provider action, or on my, invoice, I might do approval, I might create a shipment group. These are the business actions that are on that business object. We also have what we call our business queries. Those are APIs that go across multiple objects. So RIQ, our rate inquiry request, that you'll see tomorrow, that's running our agentic AI. That's on that API right there, perform network rate and route. And then we have some utility actions. What we're going to be focused on in development over the next pretty much 6 months to 12 months is building out all of our business actions as REST actions. So all of our UI actions that we'll be exposing up in those new Redwood UI are going to be running on top of the REST actions here. And they're going to, many of them we'll publish as externally callable actions as well. So if you look at our appointment management screens, you'll see all the appointment management ones. Those are APIs that we've developed internally, ones that are published out there, ones we have many clients out there live on today that are managing, that appointment setting directly through those REST APIs. These actions are going to drive our Redwood UI framework, and they're going to align with our agentic AI apps. So when you see those apps and those calls that they're invoking on the back end, these are the APIs that they are actually calling. One of the positives with doing the AI, with doing the APIs here and with Redwood is we're going to have the new Redwood screens on top of all of our action screens. So all of our action screens then will be able to be very configurable on that same metadata layer. So we always get people asking, like, here's our simple, whatever, change service provider. There's a lot of options there, right? And as I'm a user, like, some of those are not meaningful to you. So you'd be able to hide any of those fields you didn't want to, default a value, etc., as well as configuring what the result screens are. So that'll be a good part there. On our integration flows, these are the flows that we pre-stage between, us and WMS, OTM, order management. We've done a couple, in addition to the AI work you'll see there, we've extended our WMS OTM interface to handle parcel. So being able to update the parcel systems on WMS. Multi-tier flow we're working on. So these will be sort of standard integrations that we've extended. And we're also enhancing our order management and OTM flow around including our ship summary and tracking information with AI. So I'll pause just for 2 minutes if there's any integration questions. Okay, one over here. Mm-hmm. The question was the shipment actuals that we talked about. We've put a bow on it and wrapped it up for 26B. So we're kind of, we think we've handled all cases with that one. So the question is, are we keeping track of the planned quantity? Not explicitly, no. We could discuss that offline to see what the need is there, but not out of the box. All right, let me jump into some of the features here. I'm going to get a quiz on all of these afterwards. So again, I'm sure sometimes with our feature release, it's like drinking from a fire hose. But there's a lot of different areas here. Some stuff around enhancing the workbench, a little bit around Redwood. A couple of these I'm going to deep dive into. I don't have time in this presentation to do our logistics network modeling, but there's some capabilities here around capacity forecasting. If you're interested, take a highlight there that we have. Also in the enhanced workbench, I know Rupal's in the room, we got to call out the fact that the 24-hour date time format is available now. It's kind of a thing in Europe, so that's on the roadmap. 26B, quite a few of them as well. I'll dive into a few features here. So consoles, this is in a planning area. I'll highlight a few features in planning, a few features in rating, a few features in execution. So on planning, we've been enhancing and extending our console shipments. Those of you who may not use them that much, a console shipment is a shipment that can get formed based on rules. And you could actually go out and book with a carrier, maybe spot tender with a carrier, prior to you assigning orders into it. So it can be like that. It's that empty shipment that you need to go out and secure capacity against. And then we start bulk planning into that shipment. We can bulk plan, let's say, 10 orders into that console shipment and bulk plan 1. Bulk plan this afternoon, more orders come in. I add another, 15. So there are also shipments that I add into over multiple planning runs. That's why there's a consolidated shipment. It's one that's a console that we keep on adding more freight into. So on that concept, we keep adding enhancements where folks have been doing. And the latest ones that we've had here are the ability to move multiple order movements or orders together to that console shipment in one click. A console cutoff time. So if my console's managing my ocean and I know my vessel's sailing schedule, I have that. I can say, hey, my orders need to be in 48 hours before that cutoff, that time. That's my cutoff time. So managing those. And ground schedules and consoles work with 3D load building as well. And so the capabilities here is that as these orders are flowing in, we'll be rerunning our 3D load config algorithms. The other area, another planning concept, is we are extending some areas around fleet. So there's been a couple of fleet enhancements, and there'll be a couple more fleet enhancements that we're working on. So one big concept is adding shipments to the end of a work assignment. A work assignment is a logical string of shipments that could be modeling a abstract driver's work. So we have capabilities there. Hours of rest, modeling that, the ability to do it at different points in time. Here, this picture would be showing I may want to actually do my hours of rest prior to starting my day's work. So some tuning and stuff on fleet. Another big area in the planning algorithm that we've been investing time on is commitment allocation. Commitment allocation is a concept where you could say, on this lane, I want to commit this carrier gets 50% of the loads, this other carrier gets 20%, etc. So it's a way for you to do your allocations of the freight to the different carriers. And of course, we have many different dimensions here. But one of the flaws that we saw here with our commitment allocation part was on a round trip. When you go to find the lane, if you just took the source, the first source, and the destination of that shipment, well, that lane is just, it's all the same. It's all coming back to that point. So we've extended commitment allocation there to be able to do the lane to find the commitment allocation on the furthest point out type of a logic. Another commitment allocation ask and was delivered was that to say, hey, some people model it that where I'm going to give my fleet this first number of capacity shipments. They're going to get the first 3 if I can build 3. And then the extras, the leftovers, all the rest, I then want to spread out on this commitment allocation game. So here we have the ability to model that too. So these are more and more ways of driving commitment allocation. We've added a couple pieces here in our admissions calculation. And I know last year and the previous years we've given some demos on that. Is anybody in the room here taking or using, playing with? Now it seems like one of those topics really big, really not so big right now. But we added order allocation in there, which is a really powerful concept. You could take your CO2 emissions values and allocate them back to the individual orders, and some other ones. But we're really going to wait and watch our early adopters with our get some traction here, and then add some more features. But exciting area. going to jump into rating and a couple execution tasks. This one doesn't seem like it's super cool, but it really is. So rate shopping here, this is those that are using our external rating engine, API. That's the ability to maybe call out and get a bunch of rates back. I'm going to use FedEx as an example. So they have an API that we call. The way that it would work is you're going to call FedEx. Let's say you're using 4 rate services. You have ground, next day, 2-day. In previous versions, you would have to make a call per each rate service. Very inefficient. The APIs on the other side are able to give us a long list of the results back in one API call. So now we're able to say to FedEx, here's this one, here's the delivery date, and then we'll return back all of the results per rate service, make our correct decision. So this is our rate shopping extension. There's another one here that we extended that had a lot to do with our OBN integration that you're going to see later on. And it's where you're doing truckload shipments and you're out rate shopping those, which is like Uber. So in that case, the way that the architecture of OTM is designed is we like to sort of rate first, get our rating options, bring them back in, and then fine-tune our driving routine that determines when your exact stop times are. The problem with that is that API call out to Uber, if I say to Uber, I want that freight picked up this afternoon or next Monday, those are 2 very different rate costs. So here we have a flag where we can enable us, we'll actually drive first, fine-tune that, and then call out to the Ubers of the world. Very important on truckload type shipments if you're rate shopping externally. A couple little tender, kind of minor features there. Tender documents is one. So against a spot bid area, we're allowing documents to be uploaded and managed. One that was key. Commitment usage. I won't go into that one too much. Here we have, this one here is we have a concept called a shipment group in OTM. What it is it'll allow shipments to be formed maybe on that middle leg that's a container shipment that's going ocean. And from SAP, those orders come down as individual container orders. We've booked all of those on Maersk. We then can create a single shipment group out of all of those container shipments that are priced and do the financial part of it. We've all had that in the product for a while. This additional piece is now we can do a tender on that shipment group. So that can go out as a single booking request, confirmation, and the screen. So shipment groups are now a full execution tender-oriented object, showing that screens against those, some integration, some notifications, and can even be put on the carrier portal if your freight forwarder is managing that. There's been a lot of work too on appointment management, some areas on the Gantt chart as well. We have folks moving here. So some controls about blocking your areas on the dock. Some fine-tuning our transit time calculations for appointments. This is where I might be setting appointments on multiple stops along the way on a shipment. And then cutoff times. How late do you want to allow the carrier to come on the portal and set an appointment for a shipment? So as you can see, the appointment management area has gotten a lot of features in the last year, and a lot of features from Idea Labs and customers using. Another one here, mobile app, using all of our appointment capability. Being able to set appointments, change appointments, all via mobile app. Exciting one on post-action checks enabled as well in the workbench on appointments. So that wraps up that one. But just as an FYI, big adoption rate, a lot of uptake on all of the many methods to do appointment. On settlement, adding some capabilities around some secondary charge shipments, and we have invoices available for sort of modifying and viewing on our mobile app. And then we've added here some shipment group financial totals on the shipment group screen. So that's the area there. A couple ones that we're kind of work in progress. There's a concept around customer preferred routing. It's a little bit of an idea over here and a couple other companies as well. So extending OTM's ability to store and manage customer preferred routing. There's some additional mobile app flows, tender flows, planning actions that we have. There's some additional fleet and multi-segment work that we're doing. So you'll see a breadth of sort of planning and planning actions and execution tasks that we're doing. And then some 27A work, planning areas, a little bit more on consoles, and then ending with the fact that we'll be doing a lot of work on REST actions and Redwood screens. So there we go. So that was a whirlwind tour of a lot of features and some of the big concepts around Redwood and integration.